A very good afternoon, everyone. I welcome you all to today's PSAT session by Easy Scholar. And my name is Abhishek. And together with me, I have my colleagues and the SAT instructors, Amit and Asher. So before we begin with the session, just a very quick introduction about us. So we help students build a strong profile and create plans to study at top global universities. So we help students with their SAT preparation, research papers, and admission counselings. And so far, we have guided more than 1,000 students with each of these. Now, in today's session, we are going to cover the overview of the PSAT session, uh, understanding of the PSAT math and English section, time management, and use of graphing calculator. So with this, I would like to introduce my instructors for the session today. So we have Amit, who's the lead instructor for math, and you can see his credentials. So he's a public policy analyst, a published author, and a guest contributor in most of the daily journals. And he has mentored and coached thousands of students for standardized tests. Together with him is Ashe, who is the lead instructor for English, and he is certified trainer from IDP, Cambridge, ETS, Pearson, and have taught more than 4,000 students. So without a further ado, I would let Amit take over and continue with the session.
Thank you, Abhishek, and thank you all of you students for being here. I hope I'm audible to everyone. Yeah, okay. Yes. So PSAT stands for Pre-SAT or Preliminary SAT. So to understand what PSAT is about, I think let's take a couple of minutes to understand what the SAT is about, which is the main exam that we are all eventually aiming for. So SAT is a standardized test which is used, which is one of the factors that is considered by many of the top universities in US, Canada, and increasingly India to decide on which students to admit, what kind of scholarships to give to particular students, and so on. Now, think of it this way. I'm a top American college. I get admission requests from thousands of students across the world, from different educational backgrounds, different educational curriculum. How do I judge them on a common measure? And this is really where a standardized test such as the SAT comes in. It helps assess students from a very diverse range of backgrounds on a common measure and allows the university admissions committee to make a better judgment regarding which students are most suited for their programs. And if you look at it, top universities in the US, and we have, in fact, while the Q&A was going on with Ms. Dikshit, I heard a number of these names over there. So a student was interested in getting into Yale. And as you can see that the average SAT score for getting into Yale is about 1,530 out of a maximum possible of 1,600. So these universities really require you to be in the top 1 or 2% of the scoring students to have a realistic chance of getting in. So it is a test which is extremely competitive if you're trying to get into a top college. It tests you on a range of topics in English and math. And it is increasingly being used by universities in the US, in Canada, and also many of the new universities in India as well. So now that we have discussed the main points of SAT, what is the PSAT? PSAT, as far as we are sitting here in India as an Indian student, PSAT for you is a practice test for SAT. It allows you to appear for a test which is very similar to SAT in terms of how it is administered, the kind of topics it tests you on, and the skills that it is looking for. SAT is out of a maximum score of 1,600. We just discussed that. PSAT is slightly different. The maximum score you can get on a PSAT is 1,520. 760 for English, 760 for math. The good thing is that PSAT score does not have any impact on your college applications. So if you don't do very well on PSAT, it is fine. It will not affect your overall admission chances a year or two down the line. More importantly, the PSAT score will give you a fairly good idea of where you stand vis-a-vis other students and how to therefore fine-tune your preparation further. The topics that you're tested on in PSAT are pretty much the same as the test material for SAT. And for the PSAT 10, which I think many of you will be appearing for, The curriculum, I would say, is pretty much 95% of SAT. So what is the format in which PSAT is administered? PSAT is now a digitally administered test. And if you want to appear for PSAT, you have to download this app called Blue Book from the College Board website. College Board is an organization that administers SAT and a number of other tests and assigns scores to students. PSAT has two main sections, the reading and writing, the English section that is, and the second section is math. Both of these sections are divided into two subsections. And what you can see over here is the English section has two subsections, 1 and 2, both of which have 27 questions, and you have to answer them in 32 minutes. So you have a little more than a minute to answer each question. The math section also has two sections, 22 questions each, and which have to be done in about 35 minutes each, which gives you about 90 seconds per question. So over the years, what I have seen is that for most parts, the questions that are asked in SAT are not extremely difficult. But the moment you put this kind of time limit, it suddenly makes the test really difficult. Very often what happens is that a student spends 2 or 3 minutes on a single question trying to get it right. And then suddenly they realize that they're running out of time during the test itself. So PSAT is a test which tests you on English and math. Time management is really of essence here because most often what I find is that students, let's say out of the 22 questions in math, the student got the first 14 or 15 questions right, but he or she spent a little bit of extra time in the first half of the test. And by question 17 or 18, they're down to the last 3 or 4 minutes. So either they solve questions really very quickly, in which case they make mistakes, or they just randomly guess, in which case they get 3 out of 4 answers wrong. So the time management is of essence, and this is something that we emphasize during SAT and PSAT preparation with all our students. The second part is that SAT and PSAT are both adaptive tests. So there are 2 sections in English, 2 sections in math. Supposing I do very well in the first section in math and get all the 22 questions right. In that case, the second section for me is going to provide me with a set of more difficult questions. Supposing I get only 15 questions right in the first section, the second section will have easier questions, but my overall score is going to be lower than the student who got all the 22 right, by and large. So this is an adaptive test, and use of technology allows, adaptive means the test adapts to the test taker's level of understanding and knowledge and adjusts itself accordingly. So technology allows us the use of this feature, and that really allows the College Board to peg you down really well. So let's look at the math section first. There are 4 broad topics here: algebra, and which has topics like linear equations, linear functions, systems of linear equations, and so on. Approximately one third of the test is algebra, and another 1/3 of the test is advanced math, which includes non-linear equations and functions such as parabolas, exponential functions, and equivalent expressions. Problem solving and data analysis includes topics such as ratios and proportions, percentages and rates that many of you would have studied in standard 6, 7, and 8. And it also includes some basics of statistics and probability. Not the advanced probability that you study in standard 11, but some basics at least you should be able to get correct. And finally, there are some questions about 1/6 of the test from geometry and trigonometry. So this includes the common theorems about lines, angles that these lines intersect, when these lines intersect, plane figures such as trapezium, hexagons, and so on, as well as basics of trigonometry and solid geometry. The questions by and large will align with what you have studied up to this point in your school. There are certain topics such as parabolas, which may not have been covered in certain boards. If so, you have to be aware of those and study them separately. So here is an example of a problem that you may get in an SAT math test. Just take a few seconds and you don't have to solve it. I'll just explain it quickly. Okay, so the question asks us that the system of equations has finite solutions. That is the key. When I look at these two equations, I know that there is a single power of x and a single power of y, which means when I draw it on the xy plane, I get a straight line in both the cases. Infinite solution means that these two straight lines intersect at infinite points. which is only possible if it is the same straight line. Effectively, we have the same equation placed in two different ways. So we have a 6 here and we have a 18 here, which means that if the first equation is multiplied by 3, we get the second equation, which means S is equal to 6 and R is equal to 3, I think. Which means R plus S shall be equal to 9. This is an example of a typical question that you can get in an SAT or a PSAT test. In most of the mock tests that I have taken so far, I usually find 1 or 2 questions which require a good understanding of this concept. Let's take another question, a quadratic equation. Let's take a few seconds to read it as well. Okay, so we have a quadratic equation of the form ax square plus bx plus c. And this says that the equation has a single solution. Now, if we have studied quadratic equations, we know that there is this term called the discriminant, which is b square minus 4ac. If b square minus 4ac is equal to 0, the equation has one solution. If it is greater than 0, it has two solutions. And of course, if the discriminant is less than 0, then the equation does not have a solution because b square minus 4ac comes with the under root sign. So here again in this question, we have b square minus 4 times a is equal to 1, c is equal to 9, is equal to 36, which means b is equal to, b can be plus or minus 6. Plus 6 is an option that is provided, and that really is what we have to answer. So what you see over here is that these questions are not extremely difficult, but you have to be able to grasp the underlying concept quickly. In the first question, the underlying concept was that it is the same straight line. In second question, it was the underlying concept that the discriminant is going to be 0. Let's look at one final question. Let's take a few seconds to read it, please. So the circle has an area of 120 square centimeters, and the arc ABC makes an angle of 72 degrees. We have to find the area of this shaded portion covered by the arc. So because the arc covers 72 out of 360 degrees, the circle has 360 degrees and all, the arc covers 72 of those degrees. So the shaded portion is going to be 72 by 360 of the total area of the circle, which I think 72 divided by 360 is 1 over 5 multiplied by 120. And 120 divided by 5 is 24, which gives me option A as the answer. So here again, what you'll see is that we did not have to calculate the radius of the circle. We did not have to get into any of those complex calculations. We actually had a fairly straightforward calculation. The moment we understood the concept that 72 over 360 will give us the area of the segment, I think the rest was quite simple. And this is something that you will encounter again and again in SAT and PSAT related math problems. Get the concept right and everything else follows. So I understand many of you will be appearing for PSAT in a few weeks' time. So based on my experience, here are a few tips that I would like to leave with you. Whether you're appearing for PSAT in October next year, or whether you are preparing for SAT a year from now, I think these tips will come in helpful. One of the important things is to be able to memorize multiplication tables. Probably up to 20 is a good idea. The reason I say this is that for many of the smaller calculations, if you can do them mentally, you end up saving a lot of time. Instead of using a calculator, if you can multiply or add small numbers mentally, you save a lot of time. And time, of course, is of essence. Second part is that every time you use a calculator, there are chances that you may make a mistake. And if you're good with mental math, if you have made a mistake in the calculation, it often, your mind tells you that, no, I've gotten something wrong. Let me try this again. The second part is memorize some of the common formulae, such as area of a circle, area of a square, common trigonometrical ratios such as sine 30, sine 60, cos 45, tan 45, and so on. Other formulae that you need to know include volume of a sphere, volume of a cylinder, volume of a cone, surface area of a sphere, surface area of a cylinder, and so on. These formulae are provided in a reference sheet that is administered in the Blue Book app, which administers the test. But again, in my experience, if you have to look up these formula, that means you're not well versed enough with them. One, two, you actually waste time trying to figure out which expression means what. Whereas if you understand that the volume of a sphere is 4 upon 3 pi r cube, you don't really have to think. You just plug in the values of r and find the volume. So being able to memorize these formulae and recall them at will is again an advantage during these tests. I have been teaching SAT math for a number of years. There are some areas where I find students make a lot of mistakes. Percentages is one. So for example, 1%, when you convert it into decimals, is 0.01. But this is a place where a lot of students end up getting things wrong. Now, SAT does not have a lot of questions about percentages per se, but percentages form the basis of a lot of other questions. So if you don't have this concept clear, you may actually get a lot of things wrong. Similarly, degrees and radians. Now, when I was in school around your age, we had mostly been taught all our math in degrees. We did not really understand the concept of radians. And the degree to radian conversion is something that, again, flusters a lot of students. Area and volume is yet another area which you need to understand. So for example, if I ask somebody, if you ask the student to convert, let's say, a field, which is, let's say, a table which is 1 meter by 1 meter, and you are asked to convert this area into square centimeters, very often the student, without thinking, says 100 square centimeters, which is wrong. A 1 meter by 1 meter table is going to be 100 by 100 centimeters, which actually makes it 10,000 square centimeters. So area conversion into second and third dimensions, which is where area and volume comes in, is again a place where a lot of students get things wrong. So plane geometry and solid geometry, do spend time practicing this concept. And finally, of course, functions. In a typical SAT test, I have seen at least 6 or 7 questions that require a working knowledge of functions. So for example, the way, depending upon, I think this concept is taught differently in different boards. But for some of the things that I would suggest that you pay attention to in school are concepts such as compound interest, which is an example of exponential functions. Understanding compound interest makes it much easier to learn exponential functions. And the last point is something which is very specific for Indian students. Learn to use a graphing calculator. During the SAT and the PSAT, a built-in digital graphing calculator is provided for use in the app. Now, most Indian students do not use calculators for basic calculations. And we are also often not familiar with how to use a graphing calculator. In my experience, there are certain questions which look extremely complicated on the outside, but the moment you plot those equations on a graphing calculator, the solution becomes extremely simple. So the graphing calculator is an extremely powerful tool that is available to you. The day to learn how to use it is not the day of the test. The day you should actually start learning its use in advance. So if you are not familiar with it already, I would suggest that on your computers, Google for the term Desmos graphing calculator. This is exactly the tool which is provided by the College Board during the PSAT and the SAT tests. Practice, spend some time on this calculator, learn how to do calculations, learn how to plot lines, curves, circles on the graph. And I think on the test day, you will find that you are able to use this calculator much more effectively. And that again is a strategy to score more. My colleague Ashay will now cover the English part of the PSAT.
Thank you, Amit. So yeah, good afternoon to all the students. And yeah, so let's start with the English section. So like in math, the English for PSAT also has 4 main domains, as you can see. It's craft and structure, information and ideas, standard English conventions, and expressions of ideas. In terms of the weightage, if you look at the last column on the right, the weightage is almost similar for each, right? And that has a big impact on your scoring as well. So if you look at the question types, there are about 11 question types on PSAT English. This remains the same for SAT as well 1 year from now. So words in context is a question that tests your vocabulary. We'll look at an example question a little later. Text structure and purpose is where you have to understand the logical flow of a text. And then you go into cross-text connections where you're looking at 2 short texts for the same question. And then how would people in text 2, for example, respond to the hypothesis mentioned in text 1, right? So that's craft, structure, and purpose. You get about 13 to 15 questions here with a rough weightage of 28%. Information and ideas is one of the more challenging sections or the content domains for PSAT or SAT. The number of years that I've seen students, prepare for the SAT, they generally struggle with this section because there are two heavyweights here. The first question type, that's central ideas and details, where you should be able to understand what is the main concept behind the text. And then inferences is when you should be able to provide a logical conclusion to the text. So unless and until you've not really understood the text correctly or properly, this becomes challenging. So you need to make sure that you're reading the texts really carefully. You need to know what aspects of the text could be more important and then specifically focus on those. And then the question type in the middle, the command of evidence, is where they test your understanding of specifics, whether you can focus on one sentence specifically, the hypothesis or the conclusion or a view or an agreement, and then based on that sentence, whether you can reach the correct conclusion again. So like I said, this is one of the more difficult or challenging sections, and it has almost the same number of questions, 12 to 14, and a 26% weightage. But then the bottom two, that's where you should be able to punch your score up. And that's standard English conventions, which covers boundaries, which is questions on punctuation. And then you have form, structure, and sense. These are questions on basic grammar rules. And with a 26% weightage, again, this is a huge content domain. And finally, you have expression of ideas, where you're tested on your knowledge of transitions, which is linking words or connectors. And then rhetorical synthesis, again, is a simple enough question type where a student has taken some notes on a topic that he or she was studying or reviewing. And then they want to accomplish a particular goal based on those notes. So for these questions, if you just understand the question properly, the 90% of these questions, you don't even have to go through the notes or read the notes. Understand the goal, jump into the choices, you'll be able to get your answers right. Now, on this slide, another very important point that I would like to make, time management is going to be a big challenge for English, as Amit sir has already pointed out, right? You get just over 1 minute per question. There are 54 questions on PSAT English or SAT English. And for these 54 texts, for these 54 questions, sorry, you have to read 54 texts. Reading 54 texts in just over an hour can be exhausting, right? And therefore, generally what you should do, especially for those of you who are appearing for your PSAT in about 3 weeks' time, you should start with the first question type, that's words in context. So the questions on the PSAT follow this exact pattern, this exact sequence. So you should start with the vocab questions. There would be about 3 to 4 of these in every English module. And after that, you should jump to the last question, that's rhetorical synthesis, and then solve in reverse. You'll find that this strategy helps a lot because all those questions in the middle, starting from text, structure, and purpose to inferences, they're quite content heavy questions, and there are higher chances of you getting stuck in those questions. Like I said, the weightage for each of these domains is almost similar. So if you start from the bottom, once you're done with vocab, you'll find that you're able to answer these bottom 4 question types fairly quickly. And then you'll feel that I've confidently finished about 50% of my test, right? And you'll feel that, yes, you've done it quite well. And that confidence can help you greatly in these questions in the middle. So reading comprehension is obviously a skill that you have to be very good at. Vocabulary is another area that you have to work on. I know in 3 weeks you can't really do much about it, but then for a longer duration, vocabulary is something that you can definitely work on. And I'll share some tips a little later as to how you can work on that, right? So this is about the PSAT English question types. Now, if we move on, let's go to the next slide. And these are the grammar and punctuation rules that you should know. See, again, 26% of your PSAT English score depends on this. And these are very simple rules, right? Subject verb agreement. Most of you, I'm sure, have learned this in grades 4, 5, 6, right? Pronoun reference, not very difficult. Now, modifier placement and parallel structure are the 2 rules that you might have to review a little bit. you might have learned these, but you may not know the names, these names. You might know the concept, but not these terminologies. So just maybe search on Google. It's not a very difficult thing to crack, both of these modifiers and parallel structures. So just review them very carefully. And then in punctuation, again, you have to be very, very confident with, commas, semicolons, colons, and dashes, when to use them, where to use them. And, sometimes, especially on the PSAT or the SAT boundaries questions, they try and trick you with semicolons and colons, right? So you need to know that, okay, a colon, if you're using a colon, it's exactly the same to a single dash. You need to know that a semicolon and a full stop option can be eliminated. You can't use either of those if they are in the choices. Again, fanboys, conjunctions, I would highly recommend you to look through those as well. So if you get this right, like I said, 26% of your score is in your pocket. Yeah. So let's look at some sample questions for English now. Let's look at this question. So again, you don't need to solve this. I'll just give you a minute to read the question and then I'll tell you how you can approach this. Okay. So as you see, the texts are not straightforward. You will have to dive deeper into the text and then look for the answer. So first, and a very important strategy for all the English questions, you should always read the text first and then go into the choices. Never start the English questions by reading the choices first. This will mess up your mind and you'll never be able to think straight, right? So if you look at the text here, they're talking about how this particular researcher is challenging the accepted view. So there is an accepted view and this person is challenging it. Yeah. And if you look at the second sentence, it says the research team's review of this data, it revealed that as many as half the hunters were female, right? So the accepted view is that female participation in hunting was negligible. If it was negligible, then obviously the data will help challenging that accepted view. So this, they use this double negative as it is known, the strategy a lot on the SAT vocab questions or PSAT vocab questions, where you're looking at something that is being challenged, or they'll state a fact and then they'll use a however in the next sentence and they'll give you contrasting information. So you have to be able to look at this data and then again be able to get to the right answer. So yeah, here negligible, option D should be the correct answer. That the accepted view was that female participation was negligible, but the data has shown that as many as half of the hunters were female. Yeah. So okay. Am I not audible? A person has just messaged saying that I'm not audible. Hello. Is everyone
Yes,
able
you
to?
are audible.
Yes. Okay. All
So
right. So
you're,
maybe.
so you're absolutely audible, requesting the child who's unable to listen to sir to turn up the volume or to refresh your screen once.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right. So let's move on to this next question then. And this is a question on transition, right? That first question was words in context. This is transition. So the questions look similar, but here you're looking for that linking word. So what is the word that can best provide a link to these two sentences? So again, I'll give you a moment to read through and let's see. Then we'll focus on how to solve this. Okay, fine. So this is again a question where you're looking for relation between these two sentences. And again, a recommendation from my end, you'll find a transition chart. If you search for it online, you'll find it anywhere. There is a chart of transition. So if you know the families that these transitions belong to, this will make your job a lot easier as well. So in this question, options A and C, right? Options A and C, however and nevertheless, they are from the same family. So if there are two transitions from the same family, you can confidently eliminate them. Because if you want to create a contrast here, you can do it with either A or C. Yeah. So that is very, very important. Accordingly, a lot of you are saying B in the choice in the chat is the correct answer here. Accordingly is in the same family as therefore or as a result. So you're saying reforestation efforts are good, but they result in forests with limited biodiversity. Therefore, you should plant a wide variety of native flora in depleted woodland. So the problem that reforestation efforts lead to wouldn't occur. Right? So yes, accordingly is the right answer. Well done to a lot of you. Okay, let's look at the next question then. All right, so this is a boundaries question. The punctuation that I was talking about, this is how they test you on it. So again, I'll give you a moment to read through. Okay, some of you shared some answers as well, which is nice. Okay, so in this one, okay, I see various responses. Okay. Okay, so the correct answer here is C, tribe, comma, and. So again, when you look at a comma and, automatically, there is a red flag in your brain saying, okay, comma and shouldn't work. But then this is a very important rule again with fanboys conjunctions, that if you have two complete sentences on either sides, you should use these fanboys with a comma. So the first complete sentence, instead of ending it with a full stop, you use a comma. Then you use one of the fanboys according to the context, and then continue with the next sentence. So you have two complete sentences. The first sentence talking about the museum and it was founded in 1931. And the second sentence that how today, nearly after a century, it is the oldest native owned museum in the world, in the country. Right? So these are two complete sentences, and therefore option C, comma, and works the best. Yeah. So well done. Well done to a lot of you again who've got this right. Now moving on. So see, for English, it is very important for all of you to develop strong reading habits, right? And I know some of you would say that, sir, the school schedule, sir, we have tuitions and all of that. I understand. Yes, you will have a lot of work to do. But if you really want to succeed in a test like SAT or PSAT or any standardized test for that matter, inculcating a reading habit early is essential. And these are some recommendations from my end. Obviously, you can look at a number of other books, novels, newspapers, magazines as well. See, generally, you should start by reading from the area that you're really interested in. For students who are really interested in physics, for example, the first book here on the slide, Storm in a Teacup, is a great recommendation. If you're interested in economics, the second book, Free Economics, is a great recommendation, and so on. Right? So apart from books, and see, I know a lot of you would like reading fictional stories, but then you have to grow out of that a little bit. You have to be able to read some complex topics. You've seen the texts now, right? You've seen the first question on English. That was just a glimpse. That was, I would say, about 20% of what the difficulty level for other questions would be. So for those kind of questions, it is important for you to get exposure to the right kind of language. And only if you read a variety of books on a number of topics, that's when you get it. Now, two recommendations from my end, the last two images that you see here, the Mint newspaper. Those of you who can get it in a hard copy, I would highly recommend it. If not, you can also subscribe to the Mint online. It also has an online subscription. And, because again, the articles, the business section, for example, or the opinion articles that the Mint prints will help you with your vocabulary. Again, it'll expose you to complex texts and views which are subtle. That's what the PSAT and SAT tests are all about. So that will help a lot. And then the next one, which is American Scientist. This is again an online magazine. You can search for their website on Google. And if you go to American Scientists, you'll find a number of science topics or STEM topics there. I think if you go to the homepage, you scroll down about 85% of that homepage. On the left-hand side, you'll see a number of topics mentioned. So again, you can go to one of the topics that interests you first and start reading about that topic. But then slowly and steadily, the goal is to cover as much as possible. So here as well, I don't really think that you'll need a subscription for this, although a number of articles are behind a paywall. But for every paid article, you should be able to find at least one more or two free articles on the American Scientist. So it's a very good resource, especially again for the kind of language and punctuation and grammar that is used on the PSAT, you'll find it mimicked on the American Scientist. So this is the reading list. On top of this, at Easy Scholar, we conduct a book club. Every Tuesdays and Fridays, we conduct this book club at 5 p.m. It's a 30-minute session. So there, some of our students, the books that they've read, they present those books. So, okay, this was the book, this was the author, and this is what the book is talking about, and this is what I've learned from the book. That's generally what happens in these book clubs. So you're all welcome to join those. Those of you who are interested, you can maybe get in touch with your teachers and counselors, and we'll be sharing the links for these book clubs with your teachers and counselors so that you can get the links from them. Right? So every Tuesdays and Fridays, 5 p.m., 5 to 5:30 is the book club. So this is a highly recommended exercise again, especially for those of you who are looking to appear for the SAT, say in a 1 year or a 2 year time period. This will help a lot. But yeah, I can't really emphasize more on reading. Reading is a very, very important skill, and the earlier you start, the better it is. Right? So this is the reading list from my end. Okay. So Amit, if there is anything that you would like to add or cover, otherwise.
Yeah, thanks, Rashid.
Yes.
So
Yes,
one last
sure.
point that I would like to make to all of you. If you are appearing for the PSAT 3 weeks from now, if you haven't already done that, go to the College Board website, as your counselor had so correctly pointed out. Download the Blue Book app on which the test is administered. And once you download this app onto your computers, you can appear for a full-length mock test for PSAT, which is same or which is very similar to the actual test that you will be administered. It will be an adaptive mock test, and it will give you a very good idea of.
Excuse me, sir. So, what is the name of the app?
Ashay, can you please just type it out? Yeah.
Yes,
So
I'll type it in the.
this is the Blue Book app. It can be downloaded from the College Board website, and it gives you access to a number of mock tests which are identical in content and form to the actual test that you will be administered. Once you appear for this mock test, you will get a pretty good idea of all the challenges that you will encounter, the difficulty level of questions, the time management issues that we discussed, also the use of the calculator that I was pointing out and why it matters. And finally, it also gives you a score at the end of the test, along with a detailed analysis of how you scored in various sections and what are the points that you need help on. So if you haven't done this already, I think your first order of priority should be maybe before this weekend is over entirely, you should be appearing for a mock test. That's all from me. And I think we'll be happy to take any questions now.
So there is a query in the chat by Rishabh Sukhwani. Do we require a device for the PSAT or will it be provided by the school? Rishabh, we require a device that you have to get along with you, a laptop or a tab or an iPad in which you have installed the Blue Book app, downloaded it from the College Board and installed it. In case you do not have one and you do not have access to one, please borrow it from somebody in your family. Download the Blue Book app and see how adaptable it is to you. Make sure you give at least one mock test so you know the shortcuts, you know whatever the technical issues that might be there with that specific device are. In case you're unable to find even that specific device, then you can get in touch with your campus career counselor and we'll figure it out for you. But first suggestion is get your own because you'll be more comfortable with it. Getting a new device on the day might lead to certain challenges, right? Will a mobile phone work? No, a mobile phone will not work as a device. You need a laptop or an iPad or a tab. So yes, if you don't have any doubts, Malay, you can leave. Few students are facing problem. Please meet your career counselor and take your email ID. She might be able to help you out with the details then and there, Karthik. What are the dates for the PSAT? They are going to be posted in the group for you. Please meet your career counselor. She'll guide you there.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes.
Ma'am, I have a query, ma'am. Can we change the year of high school in our college board account?
I think so. It should be possible, but just go through it once more and see. And if you're still facing issues, then you can meet your career counselor.
Okay.
Abdullah, the career counselor is me for your campus. You have met me. I was there in your class. Yes. All right. What is a graphical calculator, child? It is a graphing calculator, Shaurya. It is graphing, Graphing, graphing calculator. Just go on Google and search Desmos, 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 graphing calculator. That is the exact kind that will be provided inside the app. That is the testing app to you. How to use it there, it is pretty simple to use, just like a regular calculator, but it has additional features of plotting the graphs for you then and there.
Ma'am, excuse me, ma'am, I have one more question.
Yes.
Ma'am, can we get a tutorial of using a graphing calculator anywhere online?
All right. I would ask Amit sir
I'll
if he
take
can
that.
help us there.
Thank you.
Yes.
So, as Ms. Dikshit said, just look for Desmos graphic calculator. It is fairly intuitive. I started using it a couple of years back, and I had not used the graphing calculator for almost 20 years since I was in engineering college. And I was able to grasp the basics within about an hour or so. So I think it is quite intuitive. It is very functional. Just tinker around a little bit, and you will understand. I won't. There are plenty of tutorials on YouTube on specific and detailed functions on Desmos, such as plotting complex curves or plotting complex equations. But you don't require that kind of knowledge for the SAT and PSAT tests.
Okay, sir.
Ma'am, again, while making the college board account, I'm facing another problem, that is while selecting state. There are just the selected states and I don't see which I have to select.
Beta, it will be Vedika. I'm sharing my number with you. Why don't you send me a screenshot of the issue that you're facing?
Sure, ma'am.
Right? I am just sending you my number over the private chat. So you can
Ma'am,
send me a
exactly
screenshot.
what the problem is that state is a compulsory column.
Yes, yes,
And
yes.
there are options through which we can actually select, but
Hmm.
in state, Uttar Pradesh is not there. Something is.
Vedika, like I said, child, you send me a screenshot. See, I've sent you my number over the private chat. You send me a screenshot or a screen recording, I'll help you out. Okay?
Okay, ma'am.
All right. Yes, Varnika, beta. Varnika, you
Yes,
have a question?
yes, ma'am. Ma'am, I wanted to ask you regarding the registration form. I actually filled out my graduation year as 2025 as suggested by my career counselor because she said we have to fill in the graduation date of because I'm in 10th class right now. So I set it to 2025, but now you're saying that we have to set it for the 12th. So how can we change that?
You can go back and change it, beta. Just go back to the app and change it.
Okay, ma'am.
All right.
I have a question for Amit sir. Sir, in Easy Scholar, are you do you personally take classes or is it a group class? Or how do I enroll my child?
So we do one-on-one classes because each student has different areas of difficulties, different areas of strengths. So the preparation, so each student requires a unique preparation. So we don't do group classes for our for the students working with us.
Okay.
But, yeah.
So I just go to your website and get in touch with you.
Yes, please, you can do that.
Okay.
All right. So do we have any other questions related to the content, related to the pattern of exam? Then we can ask it here. If it is related to registering on the Blue Book app or registering on the PSAT, then we can take it up later. Please let me know. Any other questions?
So I think there is a question about the graphing calculator, whether it is physical or software. So it is a virtual calculator that is built into the app. There is an icon in the app itself, and you click on it, the calculator opens up. In addition to that, you can also carry a permitted physical calculator with you. There are certain models which SAT and the College Board permits for use. You can carry those. However, my suggestion is that if you don't have extensive practice in use of a physical graphing calculator, you will be better off spending that time learning how to use Desmos properly. In my personal experience, Desmos is more powerful than any handheld device that I have used up to this point of time. Okay, there is a question on the list of allowed calculators. So as I said, that College Board, I think on their site has a, they list out the permitted models which you can carry with you. But again, unless you are familiar with how to use it, because some of these scientific or graphing calculators, they require a lot of practice in terms of figuring out which buttons and which combinations to use. If you don't have extensive experience, my suggestion would be to go for Google. For specific models, you will have to check the College Board website because that is a very large universe. There is a question on specific model, so I cannot take.
Yes. I have messaged back directly to Utkarsh telling him to check it on College Board website. Child, you can directly search it on Google. It usually the landing page appears where you can check the models that are allowed. Right. So I guess we do not have any further questions. I could see Ariba had a question, but then she vanished for a bit. Ariba, do you have a question before we wrap this up?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, like I had made an account on the website, like the College Board account, but when I'm trying to log in, like to the app, like the physical app on like the phone, it's showing that your account does not exist.
All right. So that's an issue that I know one more student from our campus was facing, Ariba. And for that, I told them to refresh and delete and completely uninstall the app and reinstall it, because at times the version that we have installed is not updated or not really has the right configuration for our phone. So that might be the case. Can you try that? Uninstalling the app from your phone and reinstalling it.
Yes, ma'am. I'll do it and I'll get back to you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yes, Anmol? I think that's the last question we are taking.
Yes, ma'am.
Anmol?
Ma'am, it is showing the error in preferred first name. It is telling that please enter a valid preferred first name.
Anmol, which campus are you from, beta?
Ma'am, Kanpur Road.
Beta, I think Anshu ma'am will be able to help you there. You send a screenshot of the issue that you're facing.
Okay,
Okay.
ma'am.
I think
Okay,
it's a little technical, maybe something that you filled right before that might be conflicting with the information you're filling there. So please send a screenshot to Anshu ma'am. I'm sure she'll guide you well.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
All right. All right. So thank you, dear children, for joining in for this wonderful and informative session. Before I wrap up this session, I would like to say a huge thank you to Ashay, to Amit sir, and to Abhishek for taking out time on on the weekend and helping our children with all the possible information, insights, answering their questions. And additionally, I would like to lay stress on a couple of things that they have mentioned. And why I repeat them is because I know that we all are in a very, very, very hectic curriculum right now with half yearlies around the corner. But PSAT is a stepping stone to what we want to achieve in the future. And that is why my request is that pay attention to what Amit sir said about getting familiar with the app, getting familiar with the way the test is going to be conducted. So go ahead, download the Blue Book app from the College Board and give at least 1 or 2 mock tests before your half yearlies and after your half yearlies, so that you're comfortable with the timing and the pattern of the test. An issue we see most of the students face is that they're not able to complete the sections in time, because they are not able to time the way they are attempting the questions. Ashay sir very well mentioned that you have 1 minute per question in the English section. It seems like a lot, but when we have to do the reading, we have to eliminate the options, the time will really run out. So do go ahead, download the Blue Book app, give at least 1 or 2 mock tests so that you are clear with the concepts. I would also like to lay stress on the reading material that Ashay sir has very kindly guided us with the list. I have shared it with your counselors also, dear students. They will be provided to you. The list will be provided to you very soon. My request would be, make sure that you are trying to read up as much as possible right now for the PSAT. The time is short. I'm sure the ones that are giving the PSAT next year, you have enough time again to continue reading, continue growing. The ones who are planning to take SAT in the future, please take this like, that you have to try and manage at least one of these books every month or every few months. It would be a great help. Additionally, I would like to thank all the attendees, my dear students, the ones who are joining us on LinkedIn, and Amit and Ashesa and Abhishek. And additionally, I would like to thank EZ Scholar for taking out the time, for being with us. I thank you, not just from my side, but from all the students and parents side. And I know Chanda ma'am is seeing us over the LinkedIn meet link. And from her behalf also, I would like to thank all of you. And thank you for the wonderful session. That's all from my side.